It happened over chicken parmesan and awkward wine toasts. One of those family dinners where you brace yourself for minor jabs and forced laughter. Her dad poured too much Cabernet. Her sister was already 4 scrolls deep into some influencer's fake vacation. I tried to keep it light, commented on the garlic bread, asked about her nephew's baseball tryouts. But halfway through a conversation about holiday plans, my wife made a pivot so sharp it sliced through the room like a steak knife. I just think I've taken on a lot more than I expected. Honestly, I've had to fill in for things most women wouldn't tolerate. I looked up, unsure if I heard that right. Her brother raised an eyebrow. Her mom gave that tight-lipped nod women reserve for passive agreement. My wife didn't look at me when she said it. She stared straight ahead, swirled her wine, then added, "It's exhausting doing so much alone, especially when you're married to someone who's not exactly competent." A beat passed. Then she laughed as if it were a joke, but no one else joined in. Maybe they were waiting for me to speak up. Perhaps they weren't surprised. My hand stayed still on the napkin. I glanced at her, then at her father. He blinked once, then started cutting his meat again. No one asked her to explain. No one questioned the insult. I nodded once and finished chewing. On the drive home, she recounted how the girls at work also felt overwhelmed by partners who don't carry their weight. She described me like I wasn't even in the car, like she was giving an NPR interview on the challenges of modern womanhood. When we pulled into the driveway, she asked if I could remember to take her car in for its service tomorrow. Said it like I was the houseboy who forgot his Tuesday chore. I didn't answer, just walked inside, set my keys down, and let her go shower. That night, while brushing my teeth, I heard her talking to her sister on speakerphone. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I was just rinsing my mouth when I caught the phrase, "He's just not the kind of guy who leads. I always end up cleaning up his messes." She wasn't even annoyed. She was calm, matter of fact. I stood there in the hallway, towel in hand, listening to her describe me like I was a charity case she regretted sponsoring. Later, when she came to bed, she curled up like nothing had been said. No tension in her voice. She asked if I had paid the gas bill yet, then turned over and fell asleep before I could answer. I lay awake for hours, staring at the dark ceiling, thinking about all the rides I'd given her when her car broke down, the way I'd picked up extra shifts during her certification program, the job interviews I coached her through, the groceries I picked up every Sunday after mowing both lawns, ours and her parents. All of it was invisible now, or worse, dismissed. Over the next few days, I tested the water. I asked her if she still wanted me to come with her to her cousin's wedding next month. She blinked slowly, like she'd forgotten I was invited. Then she said, "If you want," and walked off to answer an email. I noticed the shift in her voice when she spoke to others. At a small gathering with her friends, she described how some men just don't have that get-it-done instinct. And one of the women nodded like she'd been waiting for someone to say it first. When her mother asked about the new insurance plan we were reviewing, my wife smiled sweetly and said, "Oh, I'll handle it. He doesn't really understand this stuff." Each time, I stayed quiet because I was watching, measuring, listening. On a quiet Thursday afternoon, I heard her on another call, this time with a friend from college. He tries. I'll give him that. But trying doesn't raise a family. It doesn't fix pipes or make money appear. It's like being with someone who can't run a household but still wants credit for effort. She laughed. The other voice did too. I didn't laugh. I sat in the hallway chair just out of sight, shoes still tied, wondering how long I'd been painted as a burden. A project. Something broken she could never quite fix. The next day, she left a sticky note on the fridge with a list of errands. "Can you knock these out while I'm at brunch?" There was no please. No, thank you. I looked at the list for a long time. Then I folded it and tucked it into my wallet because it was the last one I'd ever read. The following weekend, her father stopped by unexpectedly. He brought over a box of plumbing tools, saying I might need them for that little leak under the sink. He handed it to me with a friendly chuckle, then added, "You know, the women in this family are tough. You gotta keep up." That's when I understood. This wasn't new. This was a culture. I smiled politely, thanked him for the tools, and closed the garage door once he left. I walked back into the house, poured myself a glass of water, and wrote down a straightforward sentence in my notebook. When someone tells you what they think of you, believe them. And then I started planning what my next 7 days would look like, without asking for her input, without updating her calendar, without her name attached. She said I wasn't a real man. Soon, She'd find out what living without one really feels like. Her tone changed, but her message stayed the same. Cold assessments delivered with a polished smile, each one designed to diminish me by degrees. I noticed how often she joked in front of others. He's sweet, but sometimes I feel like I'm doing everything. People would chuckle politely. One of her co-workers actually patted me on the back at a cookout, muttering, "Hang in there, buddy." I wasn't sure what I was supposed to be hanging in there. At dinner with her friends, she told a story about how I tried to fix the garbage disposal and almost flooded the kitchen. They laughed like I was some sitcom character who couldn't be trusted near tools. In reality, the problem was a worn seal I had replaced in 10 minutes. But the facts never mattered, only the narrative. I started noticing how she framed everything. If I got home late from work, he's always so distracted. If I planned something thoughtful, he tries hard. Bless his heart. That phrase, bless his heart, landed with the force of a slap. Polite, gentle, condescending. Her sister called one evening to check in. I overheard part of the conversation while I folded laundry in the other room. I've just accepted he's not really wired to lead. He's more of a support person. I paused, sock in hand, trying to decide if I'd just misheard. I hadn't. At this point, I wasn't even angry. Just done. I stopped offering to take her car in. She reminded me, "It's due for maintenance." I replied, "Sounds like it needs to be scheduled then." She stared like I'd spoken in another language. She repeated the request the next day, like maybe I'd missed my cue. I hadn't. I just chose silence. One night, she walked into the living room, looked around, then asked, "Are you planning to fix that lamp or should I call someone?" I was reading. I turned the page. She added, "It's just that it's been broken for a while." I said, "Then it's probably time to decide what's more important, keeping it or replacing it." She didn't answer. Walked back upstairs. Subtle defiance became her new tactic. She left the bills on the counter instead of the drawer where we always kept them. The message was clear. "This is yours. Handle it." I left them there. She moved them to my side of the table the next morning. I placed them back on the island by dinner. When she realized the power bill was past due, she called out from the kitchen, "Hey, the electricity might get cut off." I sipped my tea and replied, "Let's hope the company takes debit cards." Her frustration started to show in her movements. More doors slamming, louder sighs. One afternoon, she opened the fridge and let it linger there, saying just loud enough for me to hear, "Guess I'll be the one doing the shopping." Again, I began handling only my needs. When I made coffee, I used a single mug. If I cooked, it was one plate. When I folded laundry, only my shirts were in the basket. She asked if her clothes were still in the dryer. I said I hadn't checked. She accused me of being passive-aggressive. I told her I was simply redirecting the energy I used to spend on partnership into personal clarity. Eventually, she brought her mother into it. Her mom showed up one Saturday morning, uninvited, holding a casserole and concern. "She tells me you've been distant." I smiled, thanked her for the food, and said I'd been focused on simplifying things. She pressed. I didn't expand. After an awkward 10 minutes, she gave up and left. The casserole stayed in the fridge. I never touched it. The following week, she called her brother to check in. He texted me, "Need help, man? You okay?" I responded, "Never been clearer." At her next family gathering, I didn't attend. She said I had a thing. That was her way of avoiding questions. But I knew they were asking. The woman who once bragged about our teamwork now had to explain the growing divide. She started probing. One night, while brushing her hair in the mirror, she asked, "Is everything okay with you?" I said, "Absolutely." She paused, waiting. I said nothing more. She tried a different route. "Are you going through something?" I replied, "Not anymore." That caught her off guard. She laughed nervously. "Well, you're certainly acting different." I nodded. "Good to know you noticed." That weekend, she forgot to pay the internet bill. She stormed into the bedroom, demanding to know why it wasn't working. I calmly explained that the account was in her name now, per her preference for independence. Her expression shifted. A flicker of uncertainty. She asked, "When did that happen?" I answered, "The same day I decided to believe you." She blinked. "Believe me. You said I'm not competent as a man. So I made adjustments. I removed myself from what you said I don't belong to." She went silent. For the first time in weeks, there were no retorts or sarcasm. I walked out of the room, and the sound of her pacing behind me was louder than anything she could have said. She thought she had power in her story. The one where I was always the underachiever, the tag-along, the sidekick to her heroine. But now, her script had no supporting actor, no one running errands, no one fixing bills, no one covering the blind spots. She posted on social media about emotional growth, a filtered selfie with a caption about choosing yourself. But there were no likes from her usual crew. Maybe they saw through it. Perhaps they just knew what she wasn't saying. Her car needed gas. She left late for work. She missed a dentist appointment because the calendar reminders had been part of our shared plan. I had unsubscribed. Every time she glanced my way, I saw it. Not anger or confusion. Doubt. She once claimed she could live without my competence. I was making sure she had that chance. And the weight of proving herself correct was starting to look heavy. She came home from brunch that Sunday humming a pop song and tossing her purse on the couch like the world owed her a soft landing. I watched from the kitchen as she kicked off her shoes and opened the fridge. "Where's the oat milk?" I stirred my coffee slowly. "Probably at the store." She glanced over. "Didn't you do the grocery run?" "I did," I said. "Picked up exactly what I needed." She squinted, trying to decide if this was sarcasm or some kind of setup. "Okay. Well, next time, can you grab some for both of us?" I sipped and said nothing. She was beginning to notice the shift wasn't temporary. That afternoon, I logged into our financial accounts. Her name was on everything, until it wasn't. I removed her from the insurance policy I'd been funding. She told her family she could handle things on her own. This would give her the perfect opportunity to demonstrate. Next came the credit cards, the ones she used for online shopping and impulse buys. I called the bank, explained the situation, and rescinded her authorized user status. Within minutes, the balance became hers, and mine ceased to be her fallback. I transferred my paycheck into a new solo account. I adjusted my direct deposit, notified my employer, and watched the separation of finances complete itself in less than an hour. Her phone buzzed that evening during dinner. "Why can't I access the streaming service?" "Must have expired," I said while cutting my steak. A few seconds later, "My card just got declined at the boutique." I set my fork down and looked her straight in the eye. "You told people I'm incompetent. Seems like it's time you started handling things without me." Her mouth opened, then closed. She blinked twice. "I never meant." "You were clear." She fumbled with her phone. I went back to my meal. The next morning, she discovered her gym membership had been suspended. I had been covering the payments for years. Quietly, consistently. She texted me, "Did you cancel my auto debits?" I responded, "I didn't realize I was financing someone so capable. Seemed unnecessary." She called. I let it ring. The silence between us grew heavier. There were no more casual reminders about errands. No assumptions that I'd fill up her gas tank, replace light bulbs, schedule service calls, or handle pet meds. I addressed only what involved me. When the trash piled up, she made a show of wheeling it out in heels and a tight dress, like she wanted to guilt me into offering. I simply stepped aside to let her pass. Tuesday morning, she asked if I'd take a look at the broken towel rack in the guest bathroom. "I'd suggest you call someone skilled," I said, straightening my tie. "Is this really how it's going to be now?" she asked. I buttoned my cuff. "You said I wasn't the man you needed." I adjusted accordingly. Later that day, I went to the courthouse during my lunch break. A quiet filing of papers. Separate property. Split assets. The basics. I made arrangements to meet with a financial planner that Friday. Her tone changed midweek. She texted an apology for the things that were said, claiming she'd been frustrated, misunderstood, and tired from work. I replied with a thumbs up. She came home one night wearing the same dress from our anniversary dinner 2 years ago. Said she found it in the back of her closet. I nodded, complimented the color, and went back to my reading. She hovered near the couch, waiting for me to make a move. I stayed seated. "Do you want to talk?" she asked. "I'm all talked out." She stood there for a moment, arms folded, then walked upstairs. I heard drawers open, then close with more force than necessary. The following morning, she suggested we attend a marriage workshop recommended by her coworker. I told her I'd look into it. I didn't. A package arrived addressed to her, but billed to me. She'd forgotten the payment method had changed. I set it on the porch. She came home to find it sitting alone under the setting sun. Her voice that night was thin, almost unfamiliar. "I feel like you're pushing me out." I looked up from my computer. "I'm holding you to your words." She leaned against the counter, quieter than I'd seen her in weeks. What if I was wrong? I closed the lid on my laptop. Then you'll have to live with the consequences like I lived with the insults. The weekend came. She stayed home for once. No brunch plans or spa appointments. She cleaned. She made breakfast. She didn't ask for anything. But it wasn't out of affection. She stood in the doorway later that night, watching me fold laundry. You really aren't going back to the way things were, are you? I shook out a towel and aligned the corners. I won't fund disrespect. I won't perform gratitude for being insulted. You've made your assessment. I've accepted it. Her breath caught. For once, there were no clever responses. I left her standing there. Before bed, I took my ring off and placed it in the drawer beside my watch. I wasn't removing it to punish her. I just didn't see the point in pretending it still meant something. She noticed the next morning. Her hand touched her ring like it suddenly weighed more. There were no arguments, just silence filled with realization. She had always assumed I was the fallback plan, that I'd absorb every insult and still refill her world with structure, security, and sacrifice. Now, she was learning what a world without that structure actually felt like. And for the first time in years, she couldn't spend her way out of it. She stopped ordering takeout by midweek. I heard pots clattering in the kitchen, recipes pulled from that dusty binder she'd once called a phase. The scent of garlic bread drifted through the house as if it could erase every word she'd spoken. I set the table for one, took my plate, and went upstairs. The next morning, my dress shirt was freshly ironed and hung beside the door. It hadn't been there the night before. I wore something else. Her tone softened. Less snide, more careful. I'm making dinner Friday. Your favorite, tri-tip with rosemary. Sounds good, I replied, without confirming attendance. Later, she asked what kind of wine I'd like her to pick up. None, I said. I'm off alcohol. She blinked, trying to gauge whether I was upset or just indifferent. She couldn't tell anymore. That imbalance unnerved her. She began showing up in shared spaces as if it were accidental, humming in the laundry room while I folded clothes. I wandered into the living room while reading, asking pointless questions. Had I seen the tape measure? Had I checked the mail? Did I notice the neighbor's dog barking late at night? Each question was an invitation. I declined them all. On Thursday evening, her mother called me directly. I just wanted to check in. She says you're being distant. I've made things easier, I said. There was a long pause on the other end. I'm sure she didn't mean everything she said. I'm sure she did. Her mother exhaled, disappointed. Not in me, though. I could hear the resignation in her voice. She's overwhelmed, you know. So was I? For years. Silence. Before hanging up, she added one more thing. Don't confuse regret with change. I didn't. The next day, the internet was back on, somehow restored without my input. She must have called her brother, the tech guy. The new router blinked on the counter, a quiet sign she was trying to rebuild something she hadn't bothered to maintain. She placed a handwritten card beside my coffee mug. I miss you. I read it, left it on the counter, poured my drink. By Saturday, the tension had mutated into submission. She was quieter, slower in speech, and more observant of my expressions. She dressed intentionally and held her posture as if waiting to be acknowledged. When we crossed paths in the hallway, she'd pause, hoping I'd initiate. I didn't. The final straw came during a call with her sister. She spoke just loud enough for me to hear. I don't know what's happening. He's so calm. Her sister said something I couldn't quite make out. I used to complain he wasn't a leader, she continued. But now it's like I don't even exist to him. She was starting to understand the difference between being tolerated and being removed. She attempted a bigger gesture that weekend. Suggested we take a day trip. Said it could help clear the air. I told her I had plans. She asked what kind. I said, personal ones. Her voice cracked slightly. Are you meeting someone? I'm meeting peace. For the first time, she couldn't laugh it off. Her mask slipped, just for a second. She stayed up late that night, pacing. Lights went on and off. Drawers opened, then closed. Something in her rhythm had broken. Sunday morning, I found her at the kitchen table, scrolling through photos. She was staring at one from a few years ago. Us, smiling near a lake, arms around each other. I didn't interrupt. She called her father later that afternoon. I caught a few words. I messed up. Yes, I said those things. He's just gone cold. I thought he would fight for it. I thought he'd yell, or argue, or try. He said something short. She hung up, looking pale. Her fallback had failed. She'd bet on control, assumed she could insult me into proving her wrong. That by diminishing my role, she'd spark some desperate loyalty. But I gave her exactly what she claimed she could handle: distance, independence, solitude. At work, she was distracted. I got emails by accident, auto-forwarded reminders from appointments she used to schedule through our shared calendar. She missed 2 of them. She started sending longer texts, paragraphs about memories, apologies folded into passive phrases like, "I know I wasn't always fair, and maybe I took some things for granted." I acknowledged none. She cried one night in the living room, tried to mask it as allergies. I stepped over the pile of tissues and walked outside for air. Her friends noticed. One messaged me, "She's been different lately. Quiet. Unsteady." So was I typed. Then deleted it. The following week, she left a folded note on my pillow. Inside, a ring. Her ring. Underneath it, just 3 words: "I was wrong." There was no follow-up conversation. She didn't bring it up. Just went through the motions, making meals, clearing clutter, asking nothing. The queen of commentary had run out of scripts. She paced around me like a forgotten performer waiting for a curtain call. But the audience had left the theater. The woman who once told her family I lacked the strength to lead now sat in a house where leadership had left the building. The days grew still, not peaceful, just empty. She floated through the house like a guest overstaying her welcome, careful with her movements, measured with her words. I could tell she thought one gesture might undo the damage, that a quiet week could erase years of erosion. She began adjusting her schedule around mine. If I were up early, she would delay her morning. If I came home late, she kept the lights on. I watched her study my habits like a stranger trying to memorize a language she once knew. On the surface, everything looked unchanged: 2 people under one roof. In truth, the foundation had collapsed. We were just occupying separate corners of the same silence. She left more notes. I made tiny apologies and folded them into to-do lists. I also picked up your dry cleaning. Make chili your favorite. Sorry again about what I said. Like seasoning kindness with remorse could flavor the past differently. I read them all, responded to none. Late one evening, she approached with cautious steps, holding her ring, the one she'd placed on my pillow a week before. "I was hoping you'd give it back," she said softly. "I'd wear it. I'd earn it." I closed the book in my lap. "You wore it before," I said. "It didn't stop you from calling me incompetent." Her jaw tightened, eyes glassy. "That wasn't who I am. It was when you said it." She searched for words. I was venting. I felt pressure. "I spent years under pressure. You described my efforts as failures. Then, I passed those judgments to people who now look at me with pity." She wiped at her cheek. "I've been trying." "I noticed," I said, "trying to fix the image. But I was never looking for a PR campaign." She reached out, but stopped short. "So what happens now?" "I've reclaimed my peace. My dignity. I won't rent them out again." Her lips trembled. "We were good once." "Yes, until the definition of man became something you weaponized." Silence hung between us. The next morning, I met with a real estate agent. Our house was tidy, market-ready, and stripped of shared emotion. I walked each room alone, deciding what came with me. I scheduled movers for the following Friday. Clean, efficient, and final. That week, I sent a letter to her father, no explanations. Just a courteous update. The partnership had concluded. I thanked him for previous kindnesses and included my forwarding address for logistics only. She tried to intercept the momentum once more, suggested counseling, even offered a separation just to reassess. I shook my head. "We're past assessing. We're now in acceptance." Her eyes welled, and her voice lowered. "I'll change. You have. But this isn't about change. This is about consequence." On move-out day, she hovered near the entryway, arms crossed, eyes red. "Where will you go?" she asked. "Someplace honest." She nodded slowly, absorbing that truth with the weight it carried. As the truck pulled away, I caught her silhouette through the window, small, still, and speechless. The following month, I built new routines. Cooked simple meals. Took long walks. Read without tension buzzing beneath the surface. Every decision belonged to me again. People at work said I seemed lighter. I just said I was living differently. She texted once, "Thinking of you." I left it unread. What mattered had already been said. Respect had always been the deal. She broke it, and I walked away, not to teach her a lesson, but to honor one myself.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.